the first game since it was announced that Joel Embiid won't play the rest of the year. Philadelphia looks like they're getting the win. Up by 7 as George hit both. 126-119. Buddy Hield catches, shoots, no good. Ball tipped, grabbed by George. 19 seconds left. Warriors won't foul. And this is another one that got away from Golden State. No Jimmy Butler tonight, and the Warriors could not take advantage of an undermanned Philadelphia squad as well. The final score, Philadelphia 126 and Golden State 119.
Welcome in, Warriors wrap up here on 95.7 The Game, and that was a rough one. Final score in Philadelphia, as you just heard Tim Roy say, voice of the Warriors here on 95.7 The Game. Philadelphia 126, Golden State 119. The Warriors' 5-game winning streak is snapped. They miss an opportunity to move into sole possession of 6th place in the Western Conference. With the loss, they're now a half game behind the Clippers for 6th, and they're only a half game ahead of Sacramento, Minnesota, and Dallas in the Western Conference as well. Welcome into Warriors Wrap-Up. There is a lot to go through tonight here on 95.7 The Game. I'll get the number out of the way early because there's plenty of time for your calls and your texts. 888-957-9570. Again, 888-957-9570. I've got the Comcast business text line up right now, the 650, the 707 already chiming in, the 925. Appreciate you. Also, I've got our YouTube chat open as always, youtube.com/957 The Game. Plenty of chatters in our YouTube chat as well. I will check in throughout the evening here on Warriors Wrap-Up on our YouTube chat. Well, this was the Warriors' first game since the Jimmy Butler debut that they did not have Jimmy Butler, and it felt oddly familiar, didn't it? And honestly, the Warriors now, as a basketball team, if you take Jimmy Butler away, and it's relatively straightforward, simple logic, you take Jimmy Butler away now, and the Warriors are a worse team, of course, because they made a 4-for-1 trade. You got rid of Wiggins, you got rid of Schroeder, both of whom were, although at times maybe not great, specifically Schroeder, 2 key rotation pieces who were playing major minutes for you. One of them a starter essentially every night in Andrew Wiggins. You got rid of Slow-Mo, not, a normal rotation piece, but could give you some minutes when you had a couple of injuries, especially to wings and to 4s and maybe even playing some 5. And you got rid of Lindy Waters. So the reality for the Warriors now, when you miss one of your key veterans, namely Steph, Dre, or Jimmy, you're a little bit more shorthanded than you were previously. You are not in nearly as good of a position to win basketball games when one of those 3 guys are out. And that's the reality of the trade. It doesn't mean the trade was a bad one, but it means you're betting on health. And there is a little bit of a risk involved, a decent amount of risk involved in betting on the health of a squad led by a nearly 37-year-old Steph Curry and 35-year-old Draymond and 35-year-old Jimmy Butler. You are betting on health. This Warrior team is quite a bit more top-heavy than they have been in the past. However, there's also plenty of blame to go around for the players that did play in this game today. I mean, you needed somebody to support Stephen Curry. Steph, again, was awesome in this basketball game. 29 points for Steph on only 18 field goal attempts. He had 13 assists. He had 5 rebounds. In a game in which you lose by 7, Steph was a plus 12. How about this? I mean, this sums it up. And this does highlight the Jimmy Butler importance. And I think that's got to be takeaway number 1. I mean, we're now 9 games into the Jimmy Butler era. We now have our first game where Jimmy Butler's been a Warrior, and we've seen him play as a Warrior, and he hasn't played in this game, right? There was a game in L.A. where Jimmy was a Warrior and was in the building but did not yet play and did not yet debut. But since he debuted, there's been 9 games now. He's played in 8. This was the one post his debut that he has not yet played in. And we've learned so much about Jimmy Butler's impact and his influence on the Warriors in the 8 games in which he's played. But you see his value now that you take him away. And I think this sums it up very, very well. All right. Warriors with Steph Curry on the court in his 36.5 minutes tonight. 36.5 minutes when Steph Curry was on the floor. The Warriors outscored the 76ers 108-96. So that means, again, in the 36.5 minutes that Steph was on the floor, the Warriors outscored the 76ers by 12 points. The score when Steph was on the floor, Warriors 108, Sixers 96. Considering who this 76ers team is right now, down Joel Embiid, down a couple of others, and losers of 9 consecutive games. That sounds about right. Like you outscore the 76ers by 12 when Steph is on the floor. You're down Jimmy Butler. It was a hell of a performance by Steph. And you got some decent contributions elsewhere, namely from Quinton Post. GP2 was awesome off the bench in this game. Guy Santos was big as well. You just didn't get enough from Moses Moody. You got nearly nothing offensively from Brandon Pajemski. Draymond, I thought, had himself a really rough first 3 quarters, but was good in the fourth. You just didn't get enough help elsewhere. But you're plus 12 with Steph on the floor. 108-96 was the Warriors' advantage with Steph on the floor, again, in 36 and a half minutes. With Steph off the floor in about 11 and a half minutes. He sat for 11 and a half minutes in this basketball game, right? Regulation basketball game, 48 minutes. Steph played 36 and a half. There's 11 and a half minutes where Steph rested. In those 11 and a half minutes, it's essentially a quarter, right? Steph played 3 quarters of this game, sat for 1 quarter of this game. In the 3 quarters in which Steph played, the Warriors outscored the Sixers 108-96. First of all, talk about offensive efficiency. In about 3 quarters of basketball, you score 108 points. The defense wasn't great, but you were scoring enough to keep pace and to outscore them by 12. But in the essentially 12 minutes, the 1 quarter of basketball that Steph rested, it was 30-11 Philadelphia. And that's the basketball game right there. That is the basketball game right there. 30-11 Philadelphia in the 11 and a half minutes that Steph rested. The offense is so incredibly ugly without Steph on the floor when Jimmy Butler is not there. There's just not enough firepower. One of the Warriors' main guys that are all, mid to upper 30s aren't on the floor. And the reality for the Warriors is, and this is not, I don't think it's a serious injury for Jimmy Butler. We don't know exactly if he's going to play on Monday. The Warriors say he's day to day. We're probably going to get an update from Steve Kerr shortly. When we do get that, I'll let you know. And we're also going to hear from Steve Kerr coming up a little bit later on. But the reality is when the Warriors are without, I think it's specifically Steph and specifically Jimmy, but you can also include Draymond in there because despite what it looked like through the first 3 quarters tonight, he's still a very important piece to this team. When you're without one of those 3 guys, you are an entirely different basketball team. Now that's normal. You take away any team, one of any team's best 3 players, they're going to look different. The reality for the Warriors is different than for a lot of others because their 3 best players are 35 or older. And that is the risk the Warriors are running with this group. But there's no denying the results when they're on the floor. When they're on the floor, they're 7-1, and they are legitimately by net rating, by efficiency, one of the best teams in the NBA. And you can throw at me who have they played and who have they beat? I don't really care. They've been dominating teams and running them off the court. But when one of them, specifically Steph or Jimmy, don't play, it's going to be really, really challenging. And tonight was really, really challenging. You lose to a team who had lost 9 consecutive games and coming in were 20-38. And a team without the MVP in Joel Embiid. That's the Warriors' reality. You're going to need to get more when Jimmy Butler is not playing, when Steph is not playing, because it will happen. It will happen with these veterans. You're going to need more from Brandon Pajemski. You're going to need more from Moses Moody. You're going to need your guys to not miss around the rim. I mean, it reared its ugly head once again. Right around the rim. The Warriors tonight in the restricted area, right? Like just within a couple of feet of the rim. In the restricted area, the Warriors tonight, per NBA.com tracking, 29 for 44. They missed 15 right around the rim. Now, some are contested. Some are tough tips. That's not entirely fair. But I think if you were to go back and just review every single shot attempt for the Warriors, you would probably find like 6 or 7 gimmies around the rim that they missed. In a game in which you lose by 7 points, that is very, very possibly the difference in this basketball game. There was also differences elsewhere. You missed some open shots. You didn't get anything offensively from Pajemski. He scored 5 points, and he was a rare big-time negative. In fact, he leads this team in plus-minus so far this year, a -16 tonight. That was a team worst. It was a bad Pajemski game. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And the 510 who chimes in on our text line right now, and you can join the conversation. I'm going to go out to the phone lines in a second. I see a big smooth. 888-957-9570. The 5-0 chiming in. This game tonight is exactly why the Warriors need Kuminga back when Jimmy is not playing. There's absolutely no doubt, because this Warrior team right now, without Jimmy, it reverts back to the pre-Kuminga injury. And really, it's even worse than that because there's no Wiggins either because, of course, he was traded for Jimmy. When there's no Jimmy, this is a worse Warrior team than they've been all season, which is why you need Kuminga. And even when Wiggins was playing, pre-Kuminga injury, the Warriors still needed Kuminga to get 20 just to be competitive. And oftentimes, Kuminga would score 20 and they'd still lose. But it also desperately highlights the importance of Jonathan Kuminga. Maybe not necessarily like every single night, but specifically on a night like tonight when you're going to have to sit Buddy, you're going to have to sit Steph, you're going to have to sit Draymond at times. Kuminga's value really skyrockets in those moments, and they really could have used him tonight. If you had an in-rhythm Kuminga tonight, you probably win this basketball game. You probably do. But he's not quite ready yet. And by the way, Shams Charania shared what I interpreted to be a pretty rough estimate or a rough update on Jonathan Kuminga. Let me read it to you. It was Shams pregame on ESPN before this game. I guess technically it was on ABC before this game aired. Shams said that Kuminga is, quote, unlikely to return Monday in Charlotte. And Shams said that he was told by Golden State that they're considering waiting for him to return until they're back at home next weekend. We shall see. That's just a report from Shams. We have not heard that specifically from Steve Kerr and the Warriors, but that is the latest that I've heard from Shams talking about Jonathan Kuminga's potential timetable. But yeah, he was missed tonight. There's no doubt. Jimmy Butler was missed tonight hugely. You still could have won this basketball game, though, if you just got better performances from the others, right? Moses Moody and Brandon Podziemski playing, specifically Podziemski played more like a role player tonight than a starter. And that's going to happen sometimes with the youth that you're trotting out there at times, specifically on the road. A nationally televised game, right? That happens. There's some pretty concerning numbers when it comes to Moody and Podziemski, home and road splits. I can let you know about those coming up a little bit later on. There's so many things to point to. It's Butler's importance, it's Kuminga's value and how much he was missed, and it's just the lack of firepower aside from Steph, and at times Quinton Post, and tonight, aside from GP2 and Guy Santos, there was really nothing else. I mean, Buddy Hield was abysmal tonight. Buddy Hield was darn near unplayable. He was really, really bad in this basketball game tonight. It's kind of surprising that he was a +3 in his 16 and a half minutes, partly because he shared a lot of time on the floor with Steph. That +3 for Buddy Hield is, I think, a fake +3. We talk about plus-minus as a misleading statistic. It's misleading in small samples, and I think that's what this is for Buddy Hield. But you look at it over the course of a large sample, and I think it means a whole lot. But Buddy Hield was darn near unplayable tonight. You needed somebody else to hit a couple of shots for you, and you just couldn't get it. The other half of this is that Jimmy Butler's impact defensively was also felt big time. His absence was felt big time in this game. I mean, Quentin Grimes, 44 points, and he went 2 for 8 from the free throw line. He could have had 50 if he just makes his free throws. I mean, you held Tyrese Maxey to 5 points on 2 of 14 shooting. The Sixers got combined from Paul George and Tyrese Maxey 22 points on 8 of 27 shooting. If you were to tell me that the Sixers' two best scorers, considering who's injured for them right now, Paul George and Tyrese Maxey would have combined for 22 points on 27 shots, I would have told you the Warriors would have won this game by 20 points. But then Quentin Grimes lights you up for 44. Kelly Oubre in a Warriors revenge game, right, scores 20. And Yabusele, the French national who was involved in the Court of Gold in the Olympics against Steph and Team USA, he had 18 points off the bench. The others, specifically Quentin Grimes, hurt the Warriors, and the Warriors' others did not meet the expectations that the Sixers' others set in this one. 888-957-9570. It's Mark Randy with you here on Warriors Wrap Up. We're just getting going. We'll take your calls all night long here on this Saturday. Let's go out to the phone lines. Big Smooth is in Oakland. 888-957-9570. What's up, Big Smooth? You're on 95.7 The Game. How you doing? Big Smooth, you there?
Yeah, I'm hearing somebody else talking.
Oh,
so listen.
Go ahead, man. What's up?
Oh boy, this was a terrible loss. Number one, it was loss of opportunity because we would have moved up 2 spots. Man, this was a sloppy game. It just seems like they were lethargic, sloppy. Man, when you said about Buddy Hield, no, I don't. That is the falsest plus minus I've ever seen.
You're
Buddy
right.
Hield looked to me like somebody who forgot how to play basketball. I don't know what the heck was going on with Buddy Hield. And you know, Pods did take a step back these last 2 games. Man, they couldn't buy a bucket. They couldn't buy a bucket. And I'll put this also on the coaching staff. Why did we wait so long to change the way we're guarding Grimes? He was the only one who, I mean, you know, he was a problem, and we should not have waited so long. Why don't we just double him? Nobody else was doing nothing on Philly. I don't know. To me, it just seems like Buddy needs to go back. I mean, not Buddy, but my gosh, Jimmy Bucket should go back and renegotiate his contract, because if that's who we are, if he doesn't play, then we're in big trouble. And listen, I didn't need the stats. There were so many layups that were missed. Draymond Green missed at least 4 his own self. And there was a sequence where Draymond just played terrible.
Yep.
He missed the layup. He gave up a 3. Man, threw a turnover, gave up another 3. It was all one sequence. And I'm looking at this like, what is going on right? Is there a professional basketball player on the team other than Steph tonight? Because I wasn't seeing it tonight, man. Very disappointing. And I will put this across the board. Coaching staff, I didn't think they did very well either. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, appreciate the call, Big Smooth. Love hearing from you as always. I think we got to give a shout out to GP too. He was awesome off the bench in this game. And by the way, in a game in which you lose by 7, GP2 was a +8. He had 15 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 7 of 11 from the field. He was really, really good in this basketball game. But I mean, Big Smooth hits on something important, I think. Quinton Grimes was killing the Warriors from the jump, and there wasn't really much of an adjustment. They did a little bit better on him in the second half, and I think specifically in the fourth quarter, although some of the reason why he didn't score as much late was because he was missing free throws, only 2 for 8 from the free throw line. But it took a while for the Warriors to adjust to that, and I think that's why I threw that out just before we went out to Big Smooth on the phone lines, and you can follow Big Smooth, 888-957-9570. We talked so much about what the offense was like, and, 3 for 8 for Moody, 2 for 8 from Pajemski, 5 for 13 Draymond, 3 for 9 Buddy Hield. But we forget about what happened defensively. I mean, the Philadelphia 76ers, without Joel Embiid, shot 53% from the field, 57.5% from downtown, and they scored 126 points on you. They don't have their MVP. They don't have Joel Embiid. They should not be scoring anywhere near 126 on you. They shot 53% from the field and nearly 58% from downtown. And credit them, they were making some shots, but a lot of these shots are wide open. And I have a hard time believing, Jimmy Butler's a hell of a defender. Great defender. And much like Draymond, I think he makes everybody else better around him on that end. And he's a real help defender. He doesn't just defend the guy that he's guarding, but he can help limit like others. But it's hard to believe that you take that one guy out and the defense just immediately falls apart. Like, this was also a defensive disaster class for the Warriors in this basketball game. The fact that Philadelphia scored 126 points and they shot 53% from the field when Tyrese Maxey had 5 points and went 2 for 14 from the field. Oh my God. That means every other 76er besides Maxey went 43 for 71 from the field. Every other Sixer other than Tyrese Maxey, 41 for 73. That math really quickly as I bring out my calculator, 41 divided by 73. That means all of the other 76ers shot 56% from the field. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous what the Warriors did defensively in this basketball game. And I think that also is where Kuminga can have an impact. Kuminga hasn't ever proven that he can be an elite defender, but he certainly can be a positive. And the Warriors would have really missed him both, or they did. They really missed him offensively and defensively in this basketball game. But I think the main takeaway from this game is, if the Warriors are down one of their big three, Steph, Dre, or Jimmy, and specifically Steph and Jimmy, they're in trouble, especially if they don't have Kuminga back just yet. Now, we don't want to overreact to a loss where you're down Kuminga and Jimmy. Like, those are two pretty big pieces that you missed. But this is, I don't know if uneven is the right word or a team that's kind of on a razor edge is the right phrase. But like they gotta be healthy. And if they're not healthy, if one of their key guys are out, this team is entirely different. Entirely different. So there's no doubt they're a little more top heavy now because they don't have the depth that they once had. And the strength in numbers that Steve Kerr preached for so long this season, while I think it might have been overall a net negative because when you were healthy, it created problems with your rotation. And it gave Steve Kerr questions that he could not possibly answer. But when you don't have that depth anymore, and then you get an injury to a key player, your team is suddenly a whole lot worse. The Warriors could survive injuries better pre-trade than they can now. And key injuries is what I'm talking about. But we'll see where they go from here. You better hope that their key guys don't miss time, which was always the case. We knew that this was going to look different when Jimmy Butler wasn't playing, but it looked maybe more different than we were expecting it to be. All right, 888-957-9570. Time for a break here on Warriors Wrap Up. Plenty more time for your calls and your texts at 888-957-9570. Plus, I will chime in. I will take a look at our YouTube chat during the commercial break, youtube.com/957 The Game. Plenty more coming up as we react to a Warriors loss. They're now 32-28. They had a chance to climb past the Clippers for 6th in the West. They now stay put at 7th, and 3 teams behind them now are only a half game behind. This was a meaningful loss for the Warriors tonight. Final score 126-119. More Warriors Wrap Up next on 95.7 The Game.
Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank N.A., member FDIC.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM in HD1 San Francisco on Odyssey Sports Station. Always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube. Powered by First NorCal Credit Union.
Rebound goes to Post. Now to Curry, weaving in traffic right side to GP2. Handoff back to number 30. He steps out, takes a dribble, takes a three, and it's money. Cold, hard cash for Curry. And it's 90-84 as he cut the Sixer advantage by a third, and they want a timeout.
Now back to Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game.
Yeah, Warriors fought hard in this one, but they still come up short. 126-119, the final score. 76ers snapped their 9-game losing streak, and they beat the Warriors again, 126-119. Philadelphia now 21-38. Believe it or not, they're still alive in the Eastern Conference postseason hunt. Crazily enough, the Warriors fall to 32-28. Their 5-game winning streak has been snapped. With the loss, they now fall a half game behind the Clippers. Clippers a half game ahead for 6th in the West. Because the Kings won today, they beat Houston, which is interesting, by the way. I was telling you pregame, you might be rooting for the Kings to beat the Rockets if you feel good about the Warriors' odds moving forward of continuing to stack wins. And tonight doesn't really change that calculus. Rough loss, but doesn't really change the long-term calculus. The Warriors do have a shot to pick up some ground on Houston and maybe catch them. Tonight would have been a big step in that direction. But because the Kings won, the T-Wolves were idle, and because the Mavericks lost, you now have 3 teams right behind the Warriors, a half game behind them. You have the Clippers at 32-27, the Warriors a half game behind, and then the Kings, T-Wolves, Mavericks, another half game behind the Warriors. So the Warriors, what's separating the Warriors from where they currently are in 7th, which is, again, a half game behind 6th, and 10th, the final play-in spot, is 1/2 of a basketball game. 1/2 of a game. That is the difference between the Warriors being the 7 and the 10. And remember how the play-in tournament works. If you are in the 7 or the 8 spot, you have 2 chances to win 1 play-in game. If you win either of those 2 play-in games, you make the postseason. If you win the 7-8 game, you are the 7 seed. If you lose the 7-8 game, then you play the winner of the 9-10 game. If you are in the 9-10 bracket, the 9-10 half of the play-in bracket, you have to win the 9-10 game and then also beat the loser of the 7-8 game. So you want to be in the top half of the play-in if you're in the play-in. As a result, you get 2 shots at winning 1 game, and if you win one of those 2, you make a postseason series, and you would get either OKC or Denver if the season were to end today as the 1 and 2 seeds currently. But you want to avoid that entirely, and you want to be the 6 at worst, and therefore you would get a postseason series guaranteed and maybe more valuable. I mean, obviously being in a postseason series is worthy enough, but for this Warrior team who is very old and is reliant on a lot of veteran players, maybe not a ton of veteran players, but the players that they rely on heavily are all pretty darn old in NBA terms. You also get a whole week off after the end of the regular season while the play-in tournament happens. You get that whole week off to gear up for your postseason opponent as opposed to having to win 1 or 2 games in the play-in just to then make the postseason series where your opponent would have been waiting for you all week and preparing for potentially playing you. So it's a big difference being in the play-in, even if you're in the 7-8 bracket of the play-in versus being the 6 or better. That is what the Warriors are going for. No doubt. All right, 888-957-9570. It's Warriors wrap up here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy with you. The Dubs fall to the Sixers, 126-119. We spent a lot of the first segment talking about how this game really shows the value of Jimmy Butler, even if all the other games that he has played in shows that as well. But not having him available tonight maybe shows his value more than any game that we've seen him actually play in a Warriors uniform. I think it also signals how much the Warriors need Jonathan Kuminga back, especially if Jimmy Butler is to miss another game or 2. And again, the update from Shams Charania pregame on ABC was that he's hearing it's unlikely that Kuminga would return Monday in Charlotte, and he's told that the Warriors are considering waiting for him to return to the lineup until they're back at home next weekend. The Warriors, they play on Monday in Charlotte. They play on Tuesday in New York against the Knicks. They play on Thursday in Brooklyn against the Nets. Then they return home on Saturday, a week from today, against the Detroit Pistons. And maybe the Warriors are targeting that homestand, even though they have previously said they feel like he's going to return at some point this road trip. It has been a pretty gnarly ankle sprain, and we will see exactly how long it lasts, but we'll keep an eye on that. And, of course, we'll let you know whenever we do have an update on Jonathan Kuminga and his ankle and when the Warriors are expecting his return. With all that said, and all of the issues for the Warriors in this basketball game, I think we can also look at some of the we talk about missing Kuminga and missing Butler, and that's obviously a big part of this. But we can also look at some of the decisions and some of the mistakes the Warriors made down the stretch in this basketball game. And honestly, we can keep it a buck here. We can keep it real here as well. And I'm not going to shy away from calling out the officials or anything like that here. The final minute of regulation was an absolute disaster for the Warriors, and some of it was of their own creation. Some of it was also just some real bad luck. The final minute of this basketball game was strange. Warriors down 2. You just got a 3-point play from Guy Santos, who was very good off the bench in this basketball game. You're down 2 with a minute left. Quinton Grimes pulls for a 3 from the left wing. Draymond Green, a wild closeout, fouls him on a 3-point shot. That's bad enough, right? Fouling a 3-point shooter down 2 in the final minute. That's like almost sealing the game. Not quite, but it almost is. You foul him, and it's clearly a foul. I think those of us watching on ABC, however we were taking in the game, whether you were listening here on 95.7 The Game, I'm sure Tim Roy was saying, yeah, that's a foul. That's a foul. I mean, he got him. Pretty big contact from Draymond and Quinton Grimes. And as Draymond does, as he tends to do, he immediately started, waving his finger in a circle, begging Steve Kerr to challenge it. And Steve Kerr challenges it. Warriors had one timeout left. That was the Warriors' final timeout. And it's one of the worst challenge decisions I have ever seen an NBA head coach make. You got to blame Draymond for part of it. You have to know you fouled him, Draymond. I don't know how you could possibly think that wasn't a foul. You clearly touched him. You got in his landing space. You hit him. It's a foul. I don't know how you could possibly think that's worth challenging in that situation when you have one timeout left and you might need another challenge later. But I also don't know how Steve Kerr decides to challenge that. There's plenty of blame to go around for both there. Okay, so you foul a 3-point shooter. You double down on the mistake by challenging it. The challenge fails, as we all knew it was going to. Quinton Grimes goes to the free throw line. Now you're without any timeout, and you don't have an opportunity to challenge again. Quinton Grimes, you got lucky. He bailed you out. He missed the first free throw, made the second, and then missed the third. And then the Warriors find a way to not be able to grab a defensive rebound off a missed free throw. Box out. I don't know how you can't grab a rebound. And then this is where they got a little bit unlucky, but it was also partly their own doing. A ball gets knocked out of bounds, and it's called off of the Warriors. Upon review, clearly off of the 76ers. Clearly off of Paul George. Like, not even within a shadow of a doubt. But guess what? Because the Warriors just made the stupidest challenge decision in the history of challenge decisions, they don't have another challenge left. They can't challenge it. Now, the NBA should be able to, and they can, in the final 2 minutes of regulation, they should be able to go to review themselves and get the call right. Isn't that what we're interested in? Getting the call right? So I blame the NBA partly. I don't know how you don't review that. It was clearly off of Paul George. That should be Warrior basketball. But whatever. I'm also blaming the Warriors because you should have your challenge left in that situation. But you don't. So you got to live with it. All right, you strap back in, try to get another stop. Guess what? You got lucky again. Just like Quinton Grimes missed a couple of free throws, he then missed a layup. But guess what? You can't grab a defensive rebound again. And the ball goes out of bounds. And this time it's called off of the 76ers. But you know what? Nick Nurse was holding on to his challenge, so he got to challenge it, and it got overturned. I'm not really sure it should have been overturned. It was pretty darn close. It felt like a 50-50 one to me, and because it was called Warrior Ball, I thought it should have stayed Warrior Ball, but that's honestly besides the point. The Warriors shot themselves in the foot over and over and over again. Ultimately, all of that fiasco results in Philadelphia basketball. They have a third look at the rim, and Paul George hits a tough mid-range fadeaway jumper over Draymond. It's now a 5-point lead, and that's the ball game. That is the ball game. Can we count up the errors in that game, or in that final minute, in that sequence? You have one, Draymond committing a stupid foul on a three-point shooter. You have Draymond and Steve Kerr deciding to challenge said foul, which always was going to be a foul. You have the Warriors failing to get an offensive rebound. You have the decision to challenge coming back to bite you that you couldn't challenge. That's kind of 4 mistakes, although I'm really counting one of them twice, but I'm going to count it twice because that's how bad it was. 4 mistakes. You then can't get another rebound. That's 5 mistakes. And that cost you 3 points and probably a win in Philadelphia, although not guaranteed because you were still down by 2. But man, you would have had the ball down 2, and you would have had a shot at winning this basketball game. That final minute was, and then there was another one right after that. On the next ensuing Warriors possession, after the ball, you miss a shot, but the ball goes out of bounds off of Philadelphia. They couldn't corral the rebound themselves. Guy Santos inbounds to Draymond. Draymond throws right back to Guy on a designed inbounds play, I would imagine, to Guy is what it looked like, and Guy does not get inbounds quick enough and reestablish 2 feet back inbounds. He catches the ball before he does that. It's a turnover out of bounds. Ball goes back to Philadelphia. Game over. Add another mistake on there for good measure. The Warriors just fell apart down the stretch. So we can spend so much time talking about Jimmy Butler's value and Jonathan Kuminga's value, and you're all right. You're 100% right. They all mean a ton to this Warrior team, and Jimmy Butler specifically. There's no doubt. Warriors win this game if Jimmy Butler plays. They probably win this game by like 10 points. Honestly, that's how big of a difference Jimmy Butler makes. But we can also circle this Warrior team as down the stretch, and they've proven this time and time again this year, and Jimmy Butler is kind of like the ointment that covers this up, and that's great. Like, you want to get better, and you will take however you'll accept any way you can get better in these situations. But they have proven time and time and time again with just Steph and Draymond, this is an unserious basketball team down the stretch of close games. Unserious. It's hard to correctly and accurately count up the number of just boneheaded mistakes this team makes down the stretch of basketball games at times. And I don't want to overreact to one loss. Like, this does not convince me that this team is fake, that the 7-1 stretch with Jimmy Butler isn't real, and they're more like the 25-26 team that they were pre-Jimmy Butler. No, with Jimmy Butler, they're a really good basketball team, but there are major, major, major flaws. And I think the reality for the Warriors, maybe the main takeaway for the Warriors is, if this is going to result in a postseason run, the Warriors are going to need a lot to break their way. Not necessarily like in-game things. Not like they're going to need, balls to bounce their way necessarily. They're just going to need to stay really darn healthy. They're going to need to stay really darn healthy because this is a pretty top-heavy roster right now post the 4-for-1 trade that sent out Wiggins and sent out Schroeder and sent out Slow-Mo and sent out Lindy Waters for Jimmy Butler. Not that it's a bad trade. Like, of course it's not. It's a great trade, and I would do it time and time and time again. I do it 100 times out of 100. No doubt. But the risk that you run now is you're much more top-heavy than you already were, and you were already pretty darn top-heavy. Without Steph, it was already kind of disaster. Without Steph now, it's less of a disaster, but it's still not great. Without Jimmy Butler, it's still not very good either. You are top-heavy. There's no doubt about it. All right, 888-957-9570. Let's go back out to the phone lines here on Warriors Wrap-Up. It's Mark Randy with you on 95.7 The Game as the Dubs fall to the Sixers, 126-119. Alex in Philly. Alex, are you in Philadelphia as a Warrior fan? Welcome to 95.7 The Game. How you doing?
Hey, what's up, Mark? I'm coming home from the game right now. I was there tonight, and I just want to talk about how very disappointed tonight in Buddy Hield and Draymond Green. Most importantly, just missed 5 layups, gave up shots in the fourth quarter, and the only positive I'm taking away from tonight while I'm driving home is that Quinton Post, he belongs in the league. I'm very happy about what he did tonight, and I'm looking forward to what he can do in the future. Just want to get your comments on that.
Yeah, Alex, really quick, you a Warrior fan?
Yeah, 100%,
Awesome.
bro. Born and raised out in the Bay Area. Went out to school out here in Philadelphia. But, come home from the game right now. Just completely disappointed tonight in what we did.
Awesome.
And I'm in a total agreement with you right now where, I can't trust them right now going into the playoffs right now. Like, I just can't trust them right now, especially after tonight without Butler. Like, what's going to happen if we don't have him moving forward or if he has a bad shooting night?
Yeah, I hear you, Alex, and way to represent the Bay out there in Philadelphia, and thanks for tuning in from all the way out there on the East Coast. I think, you said something there at the very end. How is this team going to survive without Butler, or if he has a bad shooting night? They can survive if Butler has a bad shooting night. Like, he helps the team in so many other ways. Like, they don't need him necessarily. They're going to need it at times, but they don't need him to score 25 every night for them to be good and for him to have a positive impact. Warriors win this game with Jimmy Butler just on his presence alone, and he doesn't allow them to commit all those mistakes I just ran down in the final minute of the fourth quarter. He saves them from a few turnovers. He doesn't allow Quentin Grimes to score 44 points in this basketball game. Like, Jimmy Butler's impact is a whole lot more than what he does, in the field goal department. Like, and I agree with everything that you're saying, Alex, but I just want to make that distinction there. Now, what he talked about from Buddy Hield specifically, Buddy Hield was unplayable tonight. That was a disaster. Buddy Hield is just like a traffic cone defensively, and as a result of that, you need him to shoot the ball well. Like, you just have to get positive development, positive contribution from him on the offensive end in order for him to be a net positive, because he is such a negative defensively, and it's been a lot worse of late, it feels like. And I can understand it. If you're pressing a little bit offensively, it probably hurts you on the defensive end, but that's the reality of Jimmy Butler. And tonight he got a couple around the rim, but 0 for 6 from downtown, and some of these are open shots. It's not like he's forcing terrible look after terrible look. If he was forcing, he'd be benched, and he already isn't playing as much as he has. He's playing 16 and a half minutes tonight, and that's kind of been where it's been at for him of late. And I can bring up the game log for Jimmy. 16 and a half tonight, 17 and a half the game before, 19 and a half, 18, 25 one night. That was in Sacramento, 14 the game before. Like, his minutes have fallen off of late. It's not like he's taking terrible shots. Again, if he's taking terrible shots, he's not playing at all. Like, Steve Kerr hates that. He's getting good looks. He's just missing them. And if he's missing good looks, Buddy Hield does nothing for you. And that's just the reality. It's the same for a lot of players, right? Like, not everybody is a great defensive player. Not everybody is a positive defensively. But you have to be good on the other end if you are bad on one end. And Buddy Hield has not been good on the offensive end the last two games, and specifically tonight. He was really, really bad in this basketball game. But the other point that Alex out in Philly brought up was Quinton Post. Now, Quinton Post was a little bit more of a volume scorer today, 6 of 15. A lot of that, though, was around the rim and in the mid-range, and there were some tips and things that kind of stack up some field goal attempts for him. But, 4 for 9 from downtown. And if you're asking me, and it's crazy that I'm saying this, but I think most Warrior fans would agree with me, and part of it is because of what we just got done talking about with Buddy Hield. If you were to ask me, rank the Warriors that you're most confident in making a three right now, of course it's Steph Curry, the best shooter ever, and then it's Quinton Post, and then it's like a mile of sewage, and then everybody else. Like, that's what it is right now. It's incredible that Quinton Post, a rookie, 52nd overall pick, is the guy that you have the second most confidence in making an open three. The dude is incredible from downtown. 4 for 9 from deep tonight. If he does that every single night, Quinton Post is going to have an amazing NBA career. Like what he was tonight, again, a little bit of a volume shooter inside the arc. He was 2 for 6 from inside the arc, but he was 4 for 9 from downtown. That is a hell of a game. He had 16 points, and he had 9 rebounds, and he only turned the ball over twice. Like, you will take that from Quinton Post, there's no doubt. And I thought it was the smart and the right move for Steve Kerr to start Quinton Post in the absence of Jimmy Butler. It moves Draymond down to the 4. Moses Moody slides to the 3. Quinton Post is the easy decision to start if you have an injury to that normal starting 5. and that's what the Warriors went with, and it paid dividends in Quinton Post games. I mean, it got to a point where I'm thinking in the fourth quarter, as we're kind of gearing up for the stretch down the stretch of this basketball game, I'm thinking, all right, who's going to come along for the ride along with Steph and Quinton Post? Like, we're talking about someone else has to support Steph and Quinton Post. I mean, that's where we were at tonight. And the last couple of games, Quinton Post has been the Warriors' second highest scorer in each of their last 2 basketball games. And that's, a stretch of games that includes Draymond in both games. It includes Moody in both games. It includes Podziemski in both games. It includes Hield in both games. It includes Santos in both games. Like, Quinton Post is doing some pretty impressive things right now. And if there is a positive takeaway, it's that Quinton Post continues to prove that he belongs to be at the very least, at this very second, a key rotation piece on this Warrior team. And the ceiling is a whole hell of a lot higher than that. 888-957-9570. Let's go to Jimmy, who's in Bayview. What's up, Jimmy? You're on Warriors Wrap-Up with Mark Randy. How you doing, Jimmy?
Hey, Mark. Thanks for taking my call. I feel your pain. The people are drinking the Kool-Aid and like the Warriors are going to win a championship. The Warriors need a legitimate starting 5. I mean, Pods and Moody are they're disappointing at the starting 5. We don't have a starting 5. We have some talent finally. They're unseasoned. Then we have Buddy Hield fumbling balls out of bounds. I mean, this is not a championship team. We have 34 starting lineups. This is not a championship team. They're a very good team now, and they're watchable. And you're right. This team is pathetic without Butler. I was encouraged by their fight back, but yeah, it's almost like some sort of flashback nightmare. Like this is what they are without the new sports car playing. And it's tough. And the refs and all that down the line. The starting 5 had 10 turnovers. It's like they just forgot everything. I don't know, but
hey, Jimmy, let me ask you this question. So before tonight, Warriors 7-1 in the Jimmy Butler era. Were you allowing your mind to believe the possibilities, or did you never quite buy in that this was a team that had a run in them in the postseason?
I thought they could win a round, and that would be a very good year. And I think they need to get some of these young guys experience, and it would be invaluable for that. And then you regroup and make one more trade, and then now you've got some real action. But the team as it is one trade away. They don't have a legitimate starting 5. I mean, they've got a bunch of 6'4", 6'5" players that all play the same position. And, everybody's like, oh, wait till Kuminga comes back. It's like, I'm hoping it goes well. But, it's just another kind of traffic jam. I'm glad they made room for the young guys to get time. And there's a lot of promising stuff here. But, Pods and Moody in the starting lineup. What team is scared of that lineup? Give me a break. Anyway, but I feel you. And, and Jimmy's going to have some nights off. I don't think Jimmy had back spasms. This is just old man day off. And there's going to be probably a couple more of these, and then we'll see what it's like. But anyway, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, appreciate it, Jimmy. I think he was dealing with something real, not that it's major. Now, if this was a playoff game or final game of the regular season win and you're in the playoffs, is he playing? Yeah, I'm sure he's playing. But he had a couple of hard falls in Orlando and one where I kind of saw him hang out on the ground for a little bit longer than usual. So I wasn't terribly surprised to see him pop up on the injury report. I think he's probably dealing with a little something. Again, not that it's major, but Jimmy's right. It's going to happen throughout the course of the regular season. It's probably going to happen to Steph. It's going to happen to Draymond. There was a moment in this game where Draymond had like an awkward collision and was out on the ground and immediately grabbed his back. And I'm immediately thinking, did they just lose Draymond? Like, keep an eye on Draymond's back. Like, it's going to happen. It happens to teams whose key players are in their 20s. And the Warriors' key players are approaching 37 and 35. Like, it's going to happen. And I think we should have known this pre getting a game post Jimmy Butler acquisition without Jimmy Butler. And we should have known this. And I think if we were to run down the like example in our head, we would have come to this same conclusion that we are coming to now. The Warriors are just going to need to be healthy. And if they're healthy, I think they have a real shot to make noise in the postseason. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean I think they're going to win the West? No. Does it mean I think they can win a series? Absolutely, I think they can win a series. And you get to the final 8 in the NBA playoffs, and you've got Steph and Draymond and Jimmy Butler there. If that group is healthy, I mean, it would be hard for me to pick against them in a second-round series. Like, doesn't mean they're going to win that series and then win the Western Finals and then go to the finals and win it. Like, I'm not necessarily saying that, but you take it a step at a time, and if every step of the way you got Steph and you got Jimmy and you got Dre, like, anything's possible. But it is pretty precarious. I think that's maybe the best way I can put it. This is a precarious roster because Jimmy is right. The way that you get Moody and Podziemski to work in the starting lineup, and the 510 chiming in on the text line, Kuminga will replace Moody in the lineup once he's ready. Maybe, although I'm not sure of that 510. Even before the Jimmy Butler acquisition, Kuminga was coming off of the bench when he was healthy and playing his best. So I'm not entirely sure about that. Now, that was also before they went to this Draymond Green at the 5 business, which is generally going to be their best lineups when he's at the 5. So I don't know exactly how Steve Kerr is going to use that. Now, if things start going poorly, then they'll be more likely to make a change. But I wouldn't be shocked if Kuminga doesn't start the rest of the regular season. He's definitely not going to start when he first returns to the lineup. I would be shocked with that. And I would be maybe mildly surprised if he starts at all in the regular season, especially if the Warriors stay healthy and are winning some basketball games. Because why break up something that's working? But even if it is Podziemski and Kuminga in the starting lineup, like, you need that to be paired with Steph and Draymond and Jimmy for it to be effective. I mean, something that I was looking up, and shout out to one of our Warriors producers who's here most Warrior games, Chris O'Connell, who came up to me in the first half of this basketball game when I was right there with him, begging for some more contributions from Brandon Podziemski and from Moses Moody. He asked me, "Hey, Grandy, what do you think the difference is in Moody and Podziemski shooting at home versus on the road this year?" And it hadn't really struck me yet, the difference for home and road. So I looked it up. From three-point range specifically, I have the numbers here for you. Brandon Podziemski from 3 at home, 41%. Wow. Podziemski is an elite three-point shooter at Chase Center. Elite, 41% from downtown. On the road, 24% from downtown. That's a difference of 17% home and road splits for Podziemski. Now, it's a relatively small sample because he missed a whole month, right? But like that's a gigantic difference. There was clearly something there. What about Moses Moody? Moses Moody, 3-point percentage at home, 44%. Wow. 44% Moses Moody at home. On the road, 32%. That's a difference of 12%. So you got a 17-point difference for Podziemski, home and road splits from downtown, and a 12% difference home and road splits Moses Moody from downtown. And you know what they usually say? Role players are always better at home. And maybe the reality for the Warriors is that Podziemski and Moody are more like role players than they are as starters. And that is also the reality that the Warriors are facing. It was the reality they were facing pre-Jimmy Butler trade too, right? Like, they had a bunch of quality role players. They just didn't have anybody who fit the second scorer, the third scorer, the fourth scorer, and the fifth scorer, right? But they had a bunch of like 7th, 8th, and 9th men. Like, the Warriors pre-Jimmy Butler trade, their third best player or their fourth best player was a player who, generally speaking, should maybe be like a team's 6th or 7th best player, and so on and so forth down the line. Now, the Jimmy Butler acquisition helps out because now Jimmy Butler is a legitimate 2, and you get Kuminga back, you feel like he could be a pretty decent third scorer, And then suddenly you're asking someone like Podziemski to be your fourth scorer, or Post to be your fourth scorer, or Draymond to be your fourth scorer, or Moody to be your fourth, right? Like, there is a little bit more continuity in the way the roster lines up and the roles with which these players are trying to fill now. But when you suddenly take one of those guys out, specifically one of the top guys out, you take Steph or Jimmy out, it just all collapses. And it collapses in on itself. And it's a pretty rough look for the Warriors roster at that point. So, I mean, that's a takeaway from this one as well. I think the best way that we can describe it is this is a precarious Warriors roster. It is a top-heavy roster. They're going to need to pray for health. And if they're healthy, man, I really believe if they are healthy and they are whole, and you have Steph and you got Jimmy and you got Draymond, this team can compete with anybody. Does it mean they're going to win every series? No, of course not. They're definitely not going to get swept. They probably won't lose in 5. That group is going to win postseason basketball games, if healthy. But if you just take one of those guys away, it changes drastically what this team is capable of. They go from a team that you might not want to face off against in the postseason to a team that's going to hope and pray that they can be in the top half of the play-in. Like, that's the difference here. That is no doubt the difference in this one. All right, 888-957-9570. I mean, I just saw it on our YouTube chat, youtube.com/957thegame. The Warriors win this game if they just make their layups. Bill chiming in, Warriors have 4 bigs who can't make a freaking layup. Tonight, the Warriors around the rim, again, in the restricted area, 29 for 44, 66% around the rim. In the paint in general, 34 for 54, 63%. You hope both those are closer to 70%. And if that's the case, the Warriors win this basketball game and they run away with it. There was a stretch where Draymond missed a layup, and you know what happens when Draymond misses a layup. He begs for a foul call and is a little late getting back on defense. That led to a bucket for Philadelphia. I think that's what one of our callers might have been pointing out earlier. And then on the next Warriors possession, there actually might have been maybe a bucket in between. But on a very quickly following possession, Moses Moody missed a layup. And they're not necessarily like wide open, easy layups, but they're makeable layups. And he misses. Philly gets the board. They go down and they hit a 3. And that's like, you make your layups and you don't allow them to get in a run in transition. That's like a difference of potentially 7 or like a 9-point swing with your missed layups and Philadelphia's buckets on the other end. Like, if you just make your layups, you win this basketball game. And I feel like I've said that like 10 different times this year. This really felt like a hop in the time machine and rewind a month and a half ago. That's what this basketball game felt like. It felt like the Warriors were playing out all their nightmares from pre-Jimmy Butler this season. And it's kind of been 2 separate seasons. It's pre-Jimmy Butler and it's post-Jimmy Butler. And this game tonight, no doubt, fits into the the pre-Jimmy Butler mold. And this was, of course, post-Jimmy Butler, but he did not play. The first time since his debut, the Warriors have played a game in which Jimmy Butler did not play, and there's no surprise that they lost this one. That's how important that he is. All right, we don't have access to Steve Kerr's full post-game press conference here tonight because the game was a nationally televised game and a wonky post-game schedule for the Warriors. I did want to play this piece of sound from Steve Kerr post-game, and this is courtesy of our friend Anthony Slater, Warriors insider. You hear him on The Athletic all the time. This was I haven't heard this yet. I've been told it's a strange exchange between a reporter and Steve Kerr talking about the NBA Finals. I'm going to play this over here, Cam. I'll play it myself. This is Steve Kerr, courtesy of Anthony Slater on Twitter. You can follow him on Twitter at Anthony Slater via The Athletic. Steve Kerr and a strange back and forth with a reporter post-game in the locker room in Philadelphia tonight.
And your same questions, and I'm going to ask you again. Your bench players' performance at the finals. What do you think again?
We're going to ask that again? We're going to keep doing this? Every time you
I still have feel you are going to be final.
All right. So what was the question? Bench players in the finals?
Their performance, do you think it will be enough, this year's bench players' performance at the finals?
Yeah. We would like to make the playoffs. Playoffs? Talking about the finals? We just want to make the playoffs.
Yes. And also your former...
Let's not talk about the finals.
Okay.
Okay.
I have no clue who that reporter is, but he surprised Steve Kerr with that question. Steve Kerr pulling off a Jim Mora playoffs. I mean, we're talking about the finals. I'm just trying to make the playoffs. I mean, that's what Steve Kerr was like post game. I mean, interesting question. I mean, the question was, and wasn't the best quality. Hard to hear that. Essentially, hey Steve, do you think that your bench is good enough, to be in the finals and to potentially win the finals? And Steve Kerr didn't even answer the question, as he shouldn't. Why are you talking about the finals when we're just trying to make the playoffs? That's the right answer from Steve Kerr. But wow, what a strange back and forth there from Steve Kerr and a reporter in Philadelphia. And I don't know the history behind this, but it seemed like Steve Kerr, maybe it was just earlier in the press conference, or maybe it was pregame, or maybe that didn't sound like a Warriors beat reporter. Maybe it was some reporter in Philadelphia who, whenever the Warriors visit, asks Steve Kerr the same thing. I don't know the history, but it seemed like Steve Kerr was asked that question before by the same guy, because he said, "You're asking me about that again? I'm just trying to make the playoffs." Weird back and forth there with Steve Kerr postgame. But, I mean, it was a weird basketball game. And the Warriors ultimately lose this one again, 126-119. I think what has been so successful for the Warriors in the Jimmy Butler era, and it's maybe what has, I think it's the one area, like the one statistical area that we can point to that identifies and highlights Jimmy Butler's impact. It's the non-Steph minutes, right? The second that the Jimmy Butler trade became official, and Steve Kerr could talk about it, what he said was, Jimmy Butler's going to play essentially every second that Steph is off the court, right? So you always are going to have Jimmy Butler, if he's available, you're always going to have him on the floor when Steph's not. And as a result, and the Warriors have done some creative maneuvering with their rotations to kind of stack the non-Steph lineups as best as they can with everybody other than Steph to make the non-Steph minutes better. A big part of that has been, just the driving force of Jimmy Butler. But as a result, the Warriors have been good in the non-Steph minutes. And in fact, at times in multiple games, they have been better in the non-Steph minutes than they have been in the Steph minutes. And that's not anything against Steph. It's just the reality of the Warriors have been playing four starters, the four starters not named Steph, on the floor together with Quinton Post, and they've been playing Steph with four bench players. So you're kind of, again, stacking the cards. You're stacking the deck in favor of the non-Steph minutes. You're making it as easy as possible when Steph isn't on the court, as easy as it possibly can be without Steph. It's still difficult, but as easy as possible. And as a result, the Warriors have been pretty darn good of late with Steph on the bench. But tonight, as we turn back the clock to the pre-Jimmy Butler trade, you don't have that luxury anymore. Instead, you're looking to Podziemski and Draymond to lead the way offensively when Jimmy Butler isn't on the floor. And nothing against those two guys specifically, but they don't have an impact on offense the way Jimmy Butler does, and it's nowhere close. So tonight specifically, that non-Steph minute problem rears its ugly head. The Warriors with Steph on the court, about 3/4 of basketball, right? He played a little more than 36 minutes. So let's just, for the sake of making this an easy point here, Steph Curry played 3/4 of this basketball game. He played 36 minutes. He sat out for 1/4. He sat out for 12 minutes, right? 36 minutes on, 12 minutes off. In the 36 minutes that he was on the floor, the Warriors outscored the 76ers 108-96. 108-96. First of all, how about that offensive efficiency in those 3/4? You score 108 points in 3/4 with Steph on the court. That's pretty darn good. And you outscore the 76ers by 12. In the 12 minutes that Steph was off the floor, essentially, again, a full quarter that he is off the floor. Split up, of course, his absence isn't a full quarter like all at once, but over the course of the entire game, his absences add up to about 12 minutes. In those 12 minutes, the Warriors are outscored by the Sixers 30-11. You outscored by 19 points in 12 minutes when Steph is off the floor. So that means in a quarter of basketball, you scored 11 points. And the defense, not great. I mean, 30 points a quarter, that would be 120 points over the course of the game. You gave up 126, so about on pace with what they were when Steph was on the court. Not great, but it was the offense that did them in. 11 points in the non-Steph minutes, in 12 non-Steph minutes tonight. That efficiency is just absolutely horrendous. Kuminga coming back will help that. I would imagine they're going to pair him a little bit more with Steph in those bench squad units, at least when Kuminga is coming off of the bench, as I think he will, at the very least, to begin when he returns. That would be my guess, but he's also going to get some run elsewhere, and that will be in some of the non-Steph minutes, and you think that Kuminga should be able to help you there as well. But that's the story of this basketball game. Without Jimmy Butler, the non-Steph minutes are, again, a major, major, major problem. And it becomes a kind of a race against time when Steph is on the court, because you have to be so good with Steph on the floor in order to be able to survive when Steph is not on the floor. That's why they went and got Jimmy Butler, because they had to be so good with Steph, right, in the 30-some-odd minutes that he plays, that they can survive the 15-ish minutes that he doesn't, right? They played him more than usual tonight. They played him 3 full quarters, essentially. He normally gets around 32. He played 36. Steve Kerr played him 4 more minutes than usual, essentially, tonight. And it's going to continue to tick up in these close games down the stretch. But Kuminga is a factor there, and he's going to help this. But that Warriors issue, which has been their issue for, literally this entire run, this entire Steve Kerr era, going back to 2014, 2015. Can we be good enough in the non-Steph minute, in the Steph minutes to allow us to just be all right or maybe slightly below average without Steph, that, it doesn't really matter because we were just so darn good with Steph on the floor. So what happens when the non-Steph minutes are going to be rough, or at the very least that it's a possibility, like you felt tonight without Jimmy Butler? You're kind of in a race against time. And you have to just hope that you are effective enough when Steph's on the court that you can build up like a 10-point lead, a 15-point lead. Like, right, they did it in the first quarter. Warriors had a lead to begin this basketball game, and then Steph checked out. Warriors led 30-24 in the first 10 minutes of this game, which was all Steph Curry minutes. And then in the final 2 minutes of the quarter, without Steph on the floor, the Sixers close on a 6-0 run, and they end up tying the quarter. And then the all-bench unit loses the beginning of the second quarter as well, and Steph checks in. The 6-point deficit has completely evaporated, and now you're losing. And then you got to start over from square one. All right, Steph's playing a stretch of 8 minutes. Just how good can we be in those 8 minutes? Can he turn a deficit into a lead? Can he turn it into a big enough lead that we can survive when he rests next? That's what the Warriors' life is without Jimmy Butler now. It is a race against time in the Steph Curry minutes, and oftentimes the Warriors have found out, specifically the last 2.5 years, in that race against time, they cannot get ahead of their opponents enough. They need to lap their opponents, and they haven't been able to lap their opponents as much as they need to, because when Steph rests, this roster right now without Jimmy Butler, and even this season before the trade, they're just simply not good enough to even stay within shouting distance of their opponents when Steph's off the court. And that is the reality that the Warriors are facing right now. And the 510 chiming in just moments ago on our text line, 888-957-9570. The last championship year, the Warriors had Poole, Iguodala, and Wiggins in the non-Steph minutes. Iguodala didn't play a ton that year, but whenever he did, he was a calming force, and he certainly helped. And Poole was a big part of that. Poole was amazing in the regular season that year. Especially before Klay Thompson came back from injury. Poole was awesome. Poole was more of a starter, but he would still play a bunch of the non-Steph minutes in that stretch, and he was huge. And Wiggins was very good that year too. And again, they play a lot of minutes with Steph, but those were also a couple of the bigger players who would lead the Warriors in the non-Steph minutes as well. Yeah, it's a different group. There's no doubt. Now, it feels entirely like this is the disaster and the predicament of tonight specifically, but the Warriors had solved the non-Steph minutes conundrum with Jimmy Butler. You just need Jimmy Butler to be healthy. It's as simple as that. We already knew that, but tonight was confirmation, right? Like, there was a little bit of talk, like, maybe the first 8 games with Jimmy would do enough to, like, teach the Warriors, teach the others to play the right way, and maybe Jimmy rubbed off on him. Maybe we don't even need Jimmy on the court to feel his presence, right? To feel his positive influence. Nope, the Warriors reverted immediately right back to who they were pre-trade. And not that that's necessarily surprising, But maybe there was a hope that they would feel a little bit different than they did pre-trade. But they didn't. Now, to be fair, the Warriors probably win this game if Wiggins is there today. Quentin Grimes doesn't score 44 on Wiggins. I feel pretty confident saying that. And Wiggins probably gets you a little bit more than Podziemski would have, or maybe even that Moody would have. And Moody was fine efficiency-wise, but only scored 10 points, only took 8 shots. He was 2 of 4 from downtown. You got to find a way to score a little bit more than that, Moses. As a starter in a game like tonight without Jimmy and no other shots are falling, specifically from the rest of your starting group other than Steph and Quinton, like, you got to find a way to support your team offensively a little bit more. And maybe that's not fair to Moses and where he is as a pro, but if you're starting, like, sorry, you got to do more. Now, Moses was better than Podziemski. That's not me saying otherwise, but the Warriors needed more from him tonight. 2 of 4 from deep. Okay, make that 4 for 9. Like Quinton Post. Get a couple more looks, Moses. He had a really nice drive and finish. He drove past Andre Drummond with a nice spin move in the first half and finished around him at the rim and won. That was an amazing finish. They needed a little bit more from you in this one, though. And they just didn't quite get it. But, I mean, there's plenty of blame to go around in this one. But ultimately, I think it just comes back to the reality that this Warrior team needs to be healthy. And if they're not, then they're not going to go very far in the postseason. And as they try to catch a couple of teams in the Western Conference standings. Okay, some of the big games across the Western Conference tonight, they actually went the Warriors' way. Now, you could argue with me about this one. Kings and Rockets in Houston. I told you pregame on Warriors Live, I was thinking I would probably root for the Kings if I was a Warrior fan. The Kings are on the Warriors' heels. The Warriors were a game and a half up on the Kings prior to tonight. But I feel pretty confident that the Warriors will finish ahead of the Kings in the standings. Even after tonight's events, I still feel the same way. So I am actually, as a Warrior fan, encouraged and happy by the Kings knocking off the Rockets, because that keeps the Rockets only 5 games ahead of the Warriors in the Western standings, and that keeps hope alive potentially that the Warriors could catch the Rockets. Maybe they sneak up to 5. So that's one result. The Kings beat the Rockets 113-103. Another result in the Western Conference that's, maybe a slight positive. It's probably not going to mean all that much. The Spurs beat the Grizzlies 130-128. De'Aaron Fox hit a go-ahead jumper, a game winner in the final few seconds. Spurs win 130-128. The Grizzlies, similar to the Rockets, they have both begun to kind of fall apart a little bit of late. They both were 5-5 in their last 10, now 5-6 in their last 11 with these losses today. I guess you could argue maybe you're rooting for Memphis to win so that they could be the 3, and you rooting for the Memphis matchup 3 versus 6 if the Warriors can get to 6. But the Grizzlies and Houston Rockets, if they struggle, there is a possibility if the Warriors play good basketball down the stretch, and if they stay healthy, which is the big part, they might be able to catch one of the Grizzlies or the Rockets if those continue. And then the other in the Western Conference, this was the one that was undoubtedly a positive for the Warriors. The Bucks, led by Giannis, 29-9-9. They knock off Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, and the Mavericks 132-117 in Dallas. So, the Mavericks lose. They're now 32-29, and they stay behind the Warriors as a result of that loss. So as we look at the Western Conference standings now, the Warriors are the 7, a half game behind the Clippers, who are the 6. Warriors the 7 at 32-28. The Kings are the 8 currently, and there's kind of a 3-way tie for 8, 9, and 10. The Kings have the tiebreaker, and actually they have the percentage points advantage because the Kings are 31-28. The Timberwolves and Mavericks are 32-29, so they've both played 2 more games than the Kings have, but essentially they're tied. The Kings 31-28, a half game behind the Warriors. The T-Wolves and Mavericks 32-29, also a half game behind the Warriors. So suddenly, it's really always been this way, but it got a whole lot tighter today. 6 through 10 are separated by 1 game. The Clippers, Warriors, Kings, T-Wolves, and Mavericks separated by 1 game, 6 through 10 in the Western Conference. And you never know how this thing is going to play out. So that was the key results in the Western Conference today. As we take a look ahead at what's coming up tomorrow around the NBA and specifically in the Western Conference, the key matchups to keep an eye on with the Warriors in mind T-Wolves, Suns. Warriors should be rooting for the Suns in that game. The Suns, I think they're done, and even if they do somehow sneak into the play-in, it's not going to be over the Warriors. It might be over someone like, potentially the T-Wolves, potentially the Kings, potentially the Mavericks if they don't get healthy. So T-Wolves, Suns, an important game tomorrow. That's a 6:30 tip tomorrow on ESPN. I would be Suns fans if I'm the Warriors because the T-Wolves, again, one of those teams, just a half game behind the Warriors in the play-in standings. And then the other big one is Clippers-Lakers. Warriors, it might be painful, but Warriors should be Laker fans in that game as well. Root for the Lakers to beat the Clippers so the Warriors could potentially move back into a tie with the Clippers tomorrow if that does happen. So those are really the only two meaningful games in the West tomorrow for the Warriors. It is T-Wolves and Suns, Clippers and Lakers, both those games at 6:30 tomorrow evening on a Sunday. Meanwhile, for the Warriors, they now travel to Charlotte, where they'll take on the Hornets on Monday. Tip is at 4, which means pregame coverage begins at 3 here on 95.7 The Game. Because it's an early game, you'll hear Willard and Dibbs on Warriors Live, and I'll be back with you for postgame on Warriors Wrap-Up come Monday, March 3rd. Dubs in Charlotte versus the Hornets. Again, tip time coming up at 4. Pregame coverage beginning at 3 on 95.7 The Game. All right, before we get on out here, as always, we got to do Crashing the Boards, which is brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. For the Warriors in this game, Quinton Post. Quinton Post once again led the Warriors in rebounds with 9. He was 1 board off of a double-double. He played 25 minutes, 16 points, those 9 rebounds, 1 offensive, 8 defensive boards. He's been really good in his last couple of games. Quinton Post, last game on Thursday in Orlando, 18 points, 5 rebounds, 7 of 9 from the field, 2 of 4 from downtown. Tonight, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 6 of 15 from the field, 4 of 9 from downtown. He really has been found money for the Warriors, and he's been getting on the glass better of late as well. 9 boards tonight, and as a result, he gets the honor of crashing the boards, which, as always, is brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. Warriors in Charlotte Monday. That's game 3 of this road trip. They're in New York versus the Knicks on Tuesday on a back-to-back. So the dream for the Warriors should be handle business early versus Charlotte. Don't have to press Steph and Draymond and maybe Jimmy heavy minutes in that game. Keep them fresh as possible for New York. And then you close out the road trip on Thursday in Brooklyn before you return home for a nice homestand versus Detroit, Portland, Sacramento, the Knicks again, Denver, Milwaukee, and Toronto. That is what's ahead for the Golden State Warriors. All right, that'll do it for Warriors Wrap-Up tonight. For Cam Williams behind the glass, for Chris O'Connell, cutting up this game and doing a great job as always. Thanks so much to both those guys. My name is Mark Randy, signing off. Thanks as well to all of you for tuning in and interacting all night long here on Warriors Wrap-Up. We'll talk again coming up on Monday. Warriors fall in Philadelphia tonight. Again, the final score 126-119. Thanks for listening. We'll talk next time here on 95.7 The Game.
I'm Bob Burke, founder and chairman of Burke America.
Bye.